George Russell has quietly had a brilliant start to the 2025 season. He currently sits third in the Drivers' Championship, just 1 point away from Max in second place, and there is an argument to be made that out of all of the drivers, he has been the most consistent and maybe even the driver of the season so far. In Australia, he qualified in 4th place, made absolutely no mistakes in very difficult conditions, and started the season with a podium. In China for the sprint, he qualified in 5th place and managed to beat Leclerc to finish in 4th. Then for the race, he qualified on the front row, and even though he was jumped by Lando at the start, given McLaren's performance advantage over the rest of the grid, he still maximised the result with the car that he had, with back-to-back 3rd place finishes to start the season. Russell in general throughout his career has been a driver who's kind of flown under the radar. Even compared to just his contemporaries, he's not as successful as Max Verstappen, which in itself brings with it a huge amount of attention. He doesn't have that massive social media fan base that Lando has, and he also doesn't have the weight of Ferrari or Italy on his back like Charles Leclerc. Even inside of his own team, he's never been the most talked about driver inside of Mercedes. When Lewis was there, he was always more talked about and always more scrutinized given his legacy with the team and by virtue of being a 7-time world champion. And even this season, all of the attention has been on his rookie teammate Kimi Antonelli, given his age, given the fact that he's debuting for a front-running and race-winning team, and also the hype that has surrounded Kimi over the last few years. Mercedes itself has also kind of flown under the radar compared to the other big 3 teams. McLaren has garnered a huge amount of attention given that they have the best car and that they are also title favourites in 2025. Ferrari always have attention on themselves, but this year more than most given that Lewis is joining the team, and then especially after their massively disappointing start to the season. And then Red Bull with their driver drama is always going to attract attention. The Mercedes seems like it's almost the easiest car to drive out of the 4. Neither of the driver has really come out yet and really hinted at any balance issues or instability, and whilst obviously they would love to have a little bit more downforce and challenge the likes of the McLarens, even Lando has struggled with the McLaren in China. Max has made his feelings very clear about the difficulties with the Red Bull, and then both Hamilton and Leclerc have reiterated their frustrations with the car's inconsistency so far. With Russell and Mercedes, there's just been no drama. There's been no major stories. During the races, he's barely even been shown, which is actually a very good thing. And overall, they have started the season going totally under the radar and just quietly maximizing the car that they have. Even though it is very early into the season, Russell has kind of put himself in a position to be a bit of an outsider for the title. Despite the McLarens looking quite dominant at the beginning of this season, the margins have been very tight up at the front, and looking at last season, all it takes is one successful upgrade from Mercedes, and they could be on par with McLaren and challenging for wins on a consistent basis. Kimi Antonelli as his inexperienced teammate, I think is also going to be a bit of a help to him at the beginning of the season in the Drivers' Championship. We have seen so far that Lando and Oscar have been taking points away from each other, Lewis and Charles also have been taking points away from each other but to a lesser extent, whilst when it comes to George and Max, they have not really had to worry about their teammates so far. And now there's no doubt that in the Constructors' Championship it definitely is an advantage to have 2 very strong drivers pushing each other and scoring the maximum amount of points, despite the fact that Mercedes so far are currently sitting 2nd in the standings. Strategically, it is also better to have a strong teammate backing you up because it gives the team a little bit more flexibility when it comes to helping you at the front. But when one driver has a clear advantage over the other, it can also mean that there's less friction and less pressure on the pit wall when it comes to orchestrating both of its drivers. We have seen so far that there has been team orders already at McLaren in Australia when Oscar was told to hold position, and even at Ferrari the drivers had to swap in China when Lewis felt that Charles was faster. What we have seen from Russell in 2025 has been a culmination of all of the work that he has done over the past 2.5 years. It's not just his progression as a driver that's been really impressive, but more than anything else, it's the adversity that he's been able to bounce back from. In 2023, he had a really poor and also very disappointing season because we know how talented of a driver he is. He made lots of mistakes throughout the year, including a very big crash in Singapore late on in the race. In the championship, he was dominated by Lewis, and behind the 2 dominant Red Bulls, Whilst Lewis finished in best of the rest in 3rd, George finished down in 8th place in the championship. The landscape, however, going into 2024 was completely different. With Lewis leaving the team for Ferrari, there was more attention on Russell to not only improve after a disappointing 23, but also to step up and establish himself as the team leader in the post-Lewis era. Under huge pressure and with everyone watching, George Russell delivered his best ever season in Formula 1. He cut out those needless mistakes, he dominated Lewis in qualifying, he also just edged Lewis out in the championship, and his consistency meant that even if he was not always the outright fastest during a Grand Prix, he was always there in the right place and at the right time to capitalize and win races like in Austria, and when he was given the best car, he was also able to dominate a weekend like we saw in Las Vegas. More than anything else, he laid down a marker to Mercedes and especially Toto Wolff, who in early 2024 was starting to talk a little bit too much about wanting to sign Max Verstappen. He proved that at least on potential, he had the ability and consistency to win the World Championship for Mercedes and also lead the team as the experienced driver, both on and off the track. With Antonelli joining the team this season, Russell has created a really welcoming environment as the team leader, which in my opinion has helped to alleviate some of the pressure off Kimi's shoulders. With all of that being said, regardless of how good Russell is performing right now and how much he's thriving at being the team leader at Mercedes, he is currently a driver who doesn't have a contract for 2026. And now this to me is more than just a little bit concerning, but Russell himself in Japan defended not having a contract, saying that so far he has no stress whatsoever regarding the contract, and that usually with him and Toto a contract can be agreed upon in 24 hours before it goes to the lawyers, and that so far he is just enjoying where he is in the sport and also his performances. And now, whilst I am sure that all of that is true, and whilst I'm sure that he means everything that he is saying, would you rather be in the Lando and Oscar situation where Zach Brown is purposefully trying to tie them down to long-term contracts years in advance, or would you rather be in the George Russell situation where Toto has continued to drag this out into the final year of his contract? And now, this entire conversation and all of the speculation surrounding Russell's future was actually started by Toto himself in 2024. Not only did he say that he would do handstands to sign Max Verstappen, but Max also admitted at the end of 2024 that he and Toto did meet and discuss their futures together. I have very conflicting feelings about this whole situation because I have consistently said on my channel that given the investment into Antonelli and also the positive start that he has had in 2025, he doesn't look overawed at all for racing for Mercedes and for challenging for podiums so far. It just doesn't make any sense to drop Kimi. It would kill his confidence and also just stop the progression of his career. It means that almost certainly if Max was to come into the team, it would be George Russell who would be dropped. And now almost any team on the grid would want Max Verstappen driving for them right now, and Toto clearly respects Max a lot and wants Max at Mercedes. But Russell's start to 2025 has been so good that it almost makes me want to question, does Mercedes really need Max right now? It seems almost stupid to ask that question, but it would be incredibly unfair and massively difficult to see Russell being dropped from Mercedes, given that he has overcome and stepped up to every single challenge that he has had as an individual, and also that Mercedes and Toto have thrown at him as well. To be honest, I'm actually not sure what the right answer to this is. It's an incredibly awkward situation because how can you turn down a driver as good as Max Verstappen if he comes calling? I mean, 99 times out of 100, the right answer to any Formula 1 question is Max Verstappen. If Max is available, there shouldn't even be a hesitation. He is the best driver in Formula 1, and if he becomes available, you have to sign him. But Russell and Mercedes have been together for almost a decade. He has been a Mercedes Junior through the single-seater ladder where he won back-to-back Formula 3 and Formula 2 championships. He was still a Mercedes Junior and on that path even when he made his debut with Williams. And so it just feels like a little bit of a betrayal in their trust because he has been building this trust and that relationship with Toto from the beginning of his career. Russell so far has delivered in that trust that Toto put in him, whilst when you look at Mercedes, they haven't so far. Since 2022, when George Russell joined the team, they have still not been able to give him a championship-capable car yet, and so as a team, they have failed to even put him in the position to challenge for a world championship. It really does feel like Russell's fate is almost out of his control regardless of how well he drives. I do not care what any driver or any team principal says in the media, because the only way to show your true commitment and confidence in one another is by putting pen to paper and making it concrete, silencing all of the rumors, all of the speculation, doubling down on one another, and telling the world that this is our guy and we believe that he can win us the world title. When you look at Leclerc's contract, which is rumored to potentially be until 2029, when you look at Piastri's new deal, which goes on until the end of 2028, and also Lando, who is currently in negotiations with Zach, which I expect is going to be announced very soon beyond 2026, Russell is driving as well as any of those drivers on the grid right now, and yet he has got a seat for next year as much as I have. There is also the crazy possibility that if George Russell can challenge and maybe even win the 2025 World Championship this season, if Max still comes calling at the end of the year, what does Toto do then? Although Russell is trying really hard to play it cool about how secure he feels inside of the team, I just don't believe it. This is a really weird situation to be in, and in a way it's kind of to the credit of both of the drivers, because it takes an all-time great driver like Max being available to complicate things to this extent. My guess is that a contract is going to be signed within the next couple of months, because the speculation and pressure just isn't healthy for a driver and also the team. How many years George is going to be given, however, is going to be very, very interesting to see. George's contemporaries, as I said, are being given 3, 4, sometimes even 5-year extensions. So if George is only given a 2-year deal, or maybe even a 1+1 with an option on the team side, it basically means that we're going to start this entire Max Verstappen circus all over again in exactly a year's time. I guess my question to you is that, given this bizarre, awkward, and very strange situation with two drivers who are both deserving of that seat, if you were Toto Wolff and Max came calling, given how well George Russell is performing, what would you do? Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.